Hey everyone, this is Muddy Matt here. We've got a new video today on ideas I have on finding mud and quicksand when the community mud map just isn't cutting it for you. So of course, what is the community mud map? If you don't know it by now, you should. I'll drop a link to it in the description or the comments or both. But this is a crowdsourced map of the whole world. But for me, since I live in Indiana, I only care about the United States and really the Midwest. But it's now you see the world more than once. It's a worldwide map of places people have found and confirmed there's mud, quicksand, clay, bogs, other things too. Coal ash is a thing that people like, and probably other stuff too. Now, most of you probably know this, but Canada, the United States, really just all of North America and South America, I'm guessing. There's large population centers and then large swaths of nothing, which is kind of different from Europe, where you can usually find a town within a day's walk, since Europe was built before cars and trains. So the most someone would want to travel in a single day would be however far they can travel in a single day. So you would put towns about that distance apart. Anyway, I live in Indianapolis, and as you can see, there's only a few spots here to look at. This one is actually a pending investigation, so it doesn't really mean anything. And I've actually taken a good look at it on Google Earth, and nothing about this quarry really stands out to me as super exciting. But I don't want to claim I'm some sort of expert. If someone has been here and can prove me otherwise, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. Anyway, I have a list, and this is not an exhaustive list. In fact, I've got two more sort of more complex ideas that I think will require their own video. But anyway, 5 simple things that you can do using the wealth of knowledge we call the internet to try and find more places. First one is local news stories. For whatever reason, the news loves to cover stories of people stuck in mud and quicksand, probably because there was a time when every movie that it would even remotely make sense to have a scene had it. I'm pretty sure Vice made a story about this, about Hollywood's quicksand fetish. That was the title of it. So look up your area, town name, state name, county name, and you'll most likely find at least a handful of stories. Unfortunately, online local news sort of has a habit of hiding stories that are very old, either behind paywalls or you just can't find them, because Indianapolis quicksand rescue, there was a story about someone on the northwest side of Indianapolis in an area called Traders Point that he had to be rescued, I think in November or October. It was very late in the year, and yeah, they wrote a short story about it. The point is, if they've taken the time to write a story about it, that means there's probably one or if not more of a few things. They've got a picture of where it is, or a description of where it is, or just naming where it was. Like, we'll go to this one. Grandson credited for helping rescuing Indiana man from quicksand in Moscatatuck Wildlife Refuge. So now the whole world knows that Moscatatuck Wildlife Refuge has got some possible mud. And if we look through the story, we might get we might get an idea of how deep it is. So I I have this muted, I think.
Oh, she says her...
Nope, not muted. Sometimes they'll have pictures of the rescue, sometimes not. So you can see, now we've got a basic idea of where they were, in addition to the name of the site. And if we read, we may be able to find how deep it was. No, it doesn't look like they talk about it. But we can infer how deep it was. If it says it took them several people to pull them out, that's usually... I mean, this is just a guess because I'm not an expert on this. I would think it's deeper than the waist because as long as you have control of your legs, I would think you are able to get out as long as you're mostly physically able. So if you're, I don't know why a handicapped person would be hunting, but if they are, I'm like, seriously, good for them. I like to see that people won't let disabilities, especially physical disabilities, stop them from doing what they love. So this one is kind of unreliable because it really counts on there being places worth reporting on. So if it's not at a park of some sort, it may or may not get covered. And even if it is, you need the name of that location to really be helpful. So let's go look for another one. Utah's Arches National Park. I don't know why it's telling me about this one because I searched for Indianapolis, and this is in Utah. Here's one from a page in Fort Wayne, but it was about a guy in Florida. The Vulcan Materials Company on February 23rd. So... oh, this may have been the... oh, wait, no, this is late winter of 2026. The story that someone just sent to me the other day was in 2023. But, again, now we have another example of where you could possibly find stuff. In this case, it's the Vulcan Materials Company somewhere in Florida. And I'm sure with a quick Google search, we can actually find where that is. But, yeah, that's your first tip on finding stuff. So we'll go on to number 2. The names of lakes, rivers, swamps, and really anything that is given a name. I don't want news. I swear there is a river somewhere in here named Quicksand River. Okay, here's one. Shut up, Discord. Okay, this one is called the Sandy River, but it was apparently once known, or at least referred to as the Quicksand River. And this is an entry from Lewis and Clark, of all people. Columbia River Geology. So if you dive deep into that, you may, I don't know if there's a map of exactly where Lewis and Clark went, but if you can compare the map to the dates and their diary, you might be able to figure out where this was. Now, of course, things will change. Their adventure was in 1805, so things may have changed since then. Let me give an example, because this will actually bring us into point 3. There really isn't much to talk about point 2, because it's either it's got the name or it doesn't. And if it has the name, then you go to it and look around. Method number 3 is past events. And I have an example here. This is sort of Indianapolis legend, even though it's technically a cold case, but people generally know who did it. This is the story of the Cold Spring murders. So let me give you the very brief summary. In the 1860s, a few miles north of the downtown Indianapolis, Indianapolis used to not cover as much land as it did today. So a few miles out of town then is probably the near north side, or in this case, the mid northwest side of town, in an area now, well, I guess it was still known then as Cold Spring. So I'm guessing it says there was some sort of resort there. I'm guessing that means like a place along the river. Anyway, there are 2 bodies discovered along the White River, which is the main river that goes through Indianapolis. And at the scene, they find footprints that belong to shoes that are clearly a woman's shoes. And I guess this Mrs. Clem, she's dead, so she's not going to sue me for defamatory comments, but she was never actually convicted for the murders. It was all ancillary stuff, or hung juries or whatever. Anyway, they being the investigators, were able to track those shoes back to her, and then there were some other dealings with money scandals and get-rich-quick schemes, and Mrs. Clem recently buying a shotgun, and the man found at the scene being killed by a shotgun blast. It's actually a very cool story of how even before fingerprinting, I guess I don't know when fingerprinting came about, but obviously DNA analysis, blood type analysis, or even good communication between other cities in case this killer is traveling from place to place. And this story doesn't seem it was. I think she lived in Indianapolis. But the reason I bring this up is that the case only really took off because, one, there were footprints left in the mud near the crime scene, and that gave them their first clue. And it was a murder involving a woman, which apparently was newsworthy, like tabloids newsworthy. So look in your local area for stories about legends or unsolved killings or solved killings. And you may find stuff like, oh, the bodies were discovered buried in the mud, or in this case, there were footprints at the scene in the mud that helped you track the killer. These will probably be less reliable, just like method number 2, because the conditions in a place can change. Indianapolis used to be a very swampy region, and over time, much of that land was drained because no one likes living in a swamp if they don't have to. Imagine how the people in a swamp feel about the guy a few blocks down the street where the land has been drained and he's not dealing with his basement flooding every other weekend and mosquitoes and all that. So the swampy Indianapolis, as it used to be, is largely gone at this point. But I suspect that there are still a few swampy areas or just generally mushy areas around Indianapolis. Of course, if you don't live in Indianapolis, that doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me in finding places. Method number 4 is just go to Google Maps and search for quarries. Now, the reason quarries are sort of interlinked with the mud and quicksand community is that as soon as you start digging, you end up redistributing the soil. And if you are sorting soil by grain size or particle size, those mean the same thing, you may end up in a situation where you've got a lot of fine particles in one place. And mud and quicksand generally don't work as well when you have lots of different grain sizes, or it may not be as enjoyable, as you may have seen me talk about in the mud diary. When particles are very large, small rocks, gravel, that sort of thing, can become a lot less fun because you've got that sharp object rubbing against you. That's why a lot of people prefer clay, because clay is as small as a particle size you can get without it just disappearing into the water. So, quarries, rock quarries, sand quarries, gravel, limestone, all those sorts of things. You'll probably need to do some on-the-ground investigation to see if a place is good. So we'll use this example again, the Kokomo map that someone has flagged for investigation. So what you need to do is you need to get good at spotting or recognizing what the different colors are. So this color I suspect is water, versus this, which I think is gravel, versus this, which I think is finer particles. So sand, soil, loam, silt, clay. That is roughly the order of particle size from largest to smallest. The whole deep dive in soil analysis and all that will sort of be necessary for my more advanced methods of finding mud and quicksand. Granted, I haven't been able to test them yet, but when your main way of finding these places is word of mouth or just blindly walking around, having any sort of advantage seems like a good thing. So we'll look around here a little bit more. So this, now you can see the blue, so obviously we've got a body of water. This is much dirtier water, which means it probably has a lot more sediment in it. Same goes over here. You can actually see sort of the paths that the water is carved out of the soil. So there's a good chance right at the edge of the water that this land is very saturated. Now, the reason I'm discounting this place is it seems very difficult to get into. I think this entrance has a gate. This entrance has multiple buildings that are probably guarded by cameras. Same goes for this one. I think all of these entrances have gates. And then trying to enter along this road, you've got houses here and houses here. And of course, people driving on the road. So there's a good chance that someone will spot you coming in. That leaves going into Wildcat Creek and pushing through the tree line to get in. And that's assuming there isn't a fence around the perimeter here. Sometimes there won't be a fence because this brush is thick enough that it serves as a fence. Remember, it's only to deter people. They're really not too concerned about deer or whatever, though. I wouldn't be happy if I went to work and there's a deer stuck in the mud that's now dead from exposure, and now we've got to get it out. But who knows? Deer are clever, or they at least know where to run. As long as you're not driving straight at them, then they sort of just freeze up. The other day I was actually driving around and saw a deer running through a parking lot of all places. And then the road curved and then curved back again so that the deer was traveling diagonally and intersected the road again. And it looked like it had run in an alleyway next to a construction site. So if they're on a mission, animals will really go whichever way they can. Which is to say, the fence isn't going to keep deer out or other critters out if they can just walk in through the gate or whatever. That's another thing. You have to, if the gate is there, there's a chance that someone left it open. And that actually happened to me on Thursday when I took my second visit to the Carmel site. I don't have a name for it yet because Martin Marietta is kind of boring. I want to give places a unique name, and I haven't come up with one yet. So, yeah, someone left the gate open there Thursday. Now, there's a chance that since these gates may be automated, they may close on a timer. And now you're really in trouble if you're on the inside of the gate and it's closed, because unless you want to take your luck at their controls, which are probably locked with a key, a password, both, some sort of alarm log to tell the owners, hey, the gate opened and closed at this time. You've got all sorts of things potentially stopping you or discouraging you from opening the gate on your own, versus just calling the police or the fire department, and then you've got lots of questions to ask. But anyway, method number 5, this one I came up with rather recently, and I'm actually really happy with this one because it seems to be pretty reliable. So we're going to go over to Google Maps and we're going to search what is the name? Southwest Way Park. So this is a park on the south side, southwest side, as the name suggests, side of Indianapolis. Here it is. And what you want to do is you want to pop over to reviews and just start searching for keywords. Spoiler alert, I've already looked at this site, so I know that there will be something in here. But you may not be as lucky. It's really just, you gotta look around and try it. So I'm gonna search mud. So here we've got a review from Daniel Langley, and they include a picture. Great place for nature lovers. The mud down by the river is quite sticky. Keep that in mind. And this appears to be a picture of said mud down by the river. And you can see that it's probably enough to swallow your boots just with a single step, if not more. And for us, that's cool because now we've got photo proof and a general idea of where it is, because this park isn't that big. Let's switch over to, here we go. So it's probably somewhere in this area. So we'll go back to the reviews. Search mud again. Trails were extra muddy, couldn't get much air due to how soft and sticky the mud was. Okay, oh, this is about someone who's mountain biking. So there are only 2 reviews there. Interestingly, they're clustered around 5 or 6 years. We don't know if that was, if the rollover date was within a few months or not. But the point is that we have now a record of people saying that this place is muddy. And this is something that people like to do with Google reviews, Google Maps reviews, because why do you look at reviews? You want to see what people thought of it when they were there. So if you're hiking, say you just got off work and this place is between your work and your house, and you don't want to go back to your house to change and then go back to the park, you can look at the reviews and see if people have said, hey, this place was muddy, or hey, this place was very rugged. Basically, context clues that tell you, do I feel comfortable taking a hike here while wearing my work clothes? Now, I work in either khakis or jeans and a polo shirt. So, suitable enough for hiking as long as you don't mind washing it. As long as you're staying out of trouble, you're not going to ruin those clothes. The shoes you're wearing might be a different story. Because, yes, you can wash shoes, but only your regular sneakers or nice dress shoes or casual dress shoes or whatever are really not suited for resisting mud, and your feet are going to be wet the whole walk home, and that's a miserable experience. And that was a weird noise from downstairs, but it was probably just my washing machine. Probably. Another thing that I've found, this one is not very common because I've only seen it once, but on the Google reviews for a quarry, I once found comments from people saying that the fishing here is good. And that usually, we can infer a few things from that, other than the obvious, that the fishing is good. The first is that security there is either lax, non-existent, or doesn't care. Because people are openly saying, as openly as you can on Google reviews, because you don't have to list your name, and I don't know how many businesses look at their Google reviews. But if the people are saying, hey, I've gone fishing here, there's a chance that you might get away with going mudding there. And the people going fishing feel comfortable driving in or walking in and aren't too worried about being seen, either because they can park out of sight or park off site and walk in comfortably, or the owner just doesn't care. I don't think you're going to find reviews in here about how the quarry is muddy, because the reviews that people generally leave for quarries are truckers, or people buying aggregate. So either the loading was good, the loading was bad, this person couldn't fulfill my request, this person went above and beyond to fulfill the kind of sand and quantity I needed, those sorts of things. So that's all I've got for this video on tips and tricks on how to find mud. My upcoming video, which is going to be more in depth and I'm not going to do today, starts to look at what you might call the autism degree of detail regarding soil. So soil and geology. So I'll give you the sneak peek here, because you may not need the tutorial. You may be able to jump straight into it. But if you don't, now I've provided the teaser for my next video. There's two parts to this. The first is soil maps, and the second is topographical maps. Soil maps have categorized the type of soil everywhere in the country, and these are publicly available databases. Now, they might be a little out of date because obviously it takes a lot of time to send a crew out to an area, collect a soil sample, go back, test it, maybe go back out and test it again because something went wrong. And there's this whole system of classifying soil. So if you're familiar with the soil triangle, it is it's sort of a graph. Yeah, it's a graph that sorts soil by the percentage of three components: silt, sand, and clay. And the obvious example is a soil that is 90% sand and 10% clay and silt is probably going to be classified as a sand because it's mostly sand. So use your brain and the tools that I will go over in these videos. Let me show you an example of the soil map, at least the one for Indiana, because this map that I've been using is relatively user-friendly and provides some of the stuff you need to know. Indiana soil map. And you want one of these interactive maps because they can go into much greater detail than a PDF can. Uh-oh. Oh, that's just the home page. Okay. Is it this one? No. Okay, give me a second here. I was just talking about this to someone the other day, so I should have a link to it. on, it's got to be here somewhere. Oh, this is sort of related. You'll need to know this at some point. Every type of soil has basically a definitions page, and soil is categorized one by a name, which it's just like a person's name. It probably doesn't tell you much about the conditions. It's more about where it was found or who found it. Sloan, in this case, we might learn why it's called Sloan, but I don't think you're really here for that. This map no longer works. Maybe they've changed the URL. Okay, I didn't know they had a topographic map on here. So you may see a problem that the maps I'm looking at are for Indiana. So while I try to figure that out, let me show you a nationwide map I found. Now this one I found wasn't as useful because it sort of buries some of the stuff you need to know. And I don't know yet if you can search for stuff. So there's things that you need to know about. Poorly drained soil is more likely to be muddy because the water is not leaving. The soil is staying saturated. So I just clicked on a unit of soil here, the YOLO silty clay loam. Flooding frequency is rare, so that tells you I don't know how relevant flooding is to mud and quicksand, but do with that what you will. You can see that it's described as well drained, and that's usually a bad sign because it means the water is able to get through the soil. Either it's leaving through evaporation or it's going down into the water table. Let's click on another one. Sycamore silt loam, somewhat poorly drained. So this one is more promising, but it's also in the middle of this neighborhood, so less likely to find good mud to sink in there, but you might be wrong. The other method that I'm going to go into more detail on is the topographical map. So I actually haven't looked at this site. I don't know if this is going to be helpful or not. So I used Shade State Park the other day as my example because a location just got added within the past few months saying there's clay. We don't know how deep it is, but be prepared to hike lots. That's a bit of a bummer. And I've been to Shade State Park before. Honestly, maybe I should have thought of this. And like, hey, there's some pretty deep mud there. And if you look up, when I looked up Indiana quicksand earlier, one of the top results was a Reddit post from a guy at Shade State Park. Okay, to be honest, this isn't too helpful because there are two parts to a topographic map. The first is the elevation stuff. And if it's not shaded in like this, they will use lines to tell you, hey, the elevation has changed. So if you see a bunch of lines right next to each other, that means there's a hill there. And the closer the lines are together, the steeper the hill. So if I can find it, I got an email the other day from... Did it open in the tab that's active? Yes. Oh, now it wants to download. The topographic stuff is going to be a little more difficult because some of it is hidden behind paywalls. Some of it is going to be free but out of date. Oh, this is the area I was looking at earlier. So my Southwest Way Park is probably on here somewhere. Maybe. So you can see the contour lines. Yeah, here it is. Southwest Way Park Trails and Hill. And what you want to be looking for are symbols, not the contour lines. So let's see if this map gives us a symbols legend. These maps are pretty consistent on the symbology they use, but I don't have it memorized. And depending on how much detail they go into, I can't tell if some of these are obsolete standards or what, but there are symbols for mud and quarries and bogs, stuff like that. I don't know how big the area it has to be for someone to label it. So this dashed line tells you that these are quarry pits. This tells you that there's wet wooded land, something to do with forested marsh, I think. So if there weren't so many trees here, this would probably be worth looking at. But sort of a rule of thumb is that when you're surrounded by trees, there is a decent chance that the roots will just stop you from sinking. I haven't actually tested that, but it's something that I have found time and time again on different sites or accounts on looking for mud. These colors might mean something. Obviously the green means tree. Maybe the brown is empty clearing. So yeah, that's the gist of it. Ooh, Swamp Creek. That could be an area worth investigating. So there's a chance that you can combine these two technical methods, which again I'll go over in more detail in another video, with one if not several, if not all of the methods that I've already shared with you today, which were local news stories, names of locations, whether it's geographic, geologic, or municipal, so town names, street names, past events, quarries, and Google Maps reviews. So let's say I want to look at this area. I suspect that it's muddy because this park is here, and I found, what do you know, there's a creek called Swamp Creek here. That's a pretty promising name. I might want to check out this area on a topographic map, or the soil map, or both. So yeah, that's about it. Hopefully this will help you in finding mud near you. If you're not in the United States, I suspect that, I think these methods, the 5 methods that I've just gone over, should work everywhere, because everywhere there's news everywhere. There are names of bodies of water. That's something everyone does. There's going to be past events everywhere you go. Quarries will basically be everywhere unless the ground is way too saturated, in which case just keep looking in a different area. And of course, people all over the world use Google Maps, so that one shouldn't be a concern either. The 2 more advanced methods that I will be going over may not work as well outside of the United States, but perhaps there are databases similar to those for your country, and hopefully they work similarly enough to my 2 methods that you can make good use of them. Anyway, this is Muddy Matt signing out for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this useful.